The painting wasn't even meant to be here. It was supposed to stay hidden in my cramped studio, forgotten among coffee-stained sketches and unfinished canvases. But there it was, hanging under the harsh museum lights, exposed to hundreds of eyes, and worst of all, his. Ethan Carrington, the most ruthless art critic in New York, stood before my work with the kind of silence that kills careers. One arch of his brow could shred years of hope. And right now, that brow was arched. I wanted to melt into the marble floor. My friends told me to be proud, that my art deserved to be seen. But they didn't understand the terror of Ethan's gaze. He wasn't just a critic. He was the kind of man whose words could make galleries lock their doors on you forever. And yet, beneath the suffocating weight of his judgment, I noticed something strange. He wasn't dismissing the painting. His eyes lingered, sharp but hesitant, as though my brushstrokes whispered secrets only he could hear. I swallowed hard, forcing myself not to look away. For a moment, it felt like the entire gallery disappeared, the murmurs of visitors, the clinking of wine glasses, the distant music. It was just him and me, my chaotic soul laid bare on canvas, his rigid armor cracking just slightly as he looked at it. When he finally spoke, his voice was cool, detached. "This is dangerous, dangerous." The word hit me harder than if he had laughed. I should have been grateful he didn't outright call it trash. But instead, his comment ignited something reckless inside me. "Or maybe," I said before I could stop myself, "it's just honest. Something you're not used to." His head turned, slowly, like a predator finally acknowledging prey that dared to bite back. For the first time, Ethan Carrington looked at me, not the painting. And God help me, the intensity in his gaze was almost unbearable. The night dragged on, but his words haunted me. Dangerous. Honest. I lay awake in my tiny Brooklyn apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying the way his eyes had flickered with something I couldn't quite name. By morning, I convinced myself it was nothing. Critics like him don't waste their thoughts on nobodies like me. But when his review appeared online 2 days later, my heart stopped. An untitled piece by a nameless painter has unsettled me more than I care to admit. Its rawness is reckless, its technique unpolished, but there is truth in it, and truth is rarely beautiful. It wasn't praise. It wasn't condemnation. It was something else. And it changed everything. Suddenly, curators wanted to know my name. Invitations trickled in. Galleries that had ignored my emails for years now reached out with polite interest. All because Ethan Carrington, the unyielding king of criticism, had written about me. I should have been thrilled. Instead, I was furious, because his words painted me as reckless, untrained, impulsive. And maybe I was. But damn it, he didn't get to define me. So when I saw him again weeks later at another exhibition, I marched straight up to him. "You used me." He blinked, taken aback, but only for a second. His composure snapped back like steel. "I wrote what I saw." "No," I shot back. "You wrote what you wanted people to see. There's a difference." For a moment, silence stretched between us, sharp as broken glass. Then, unexpectedly, his lips curved into something dangerously close to a smile. "Maybe you're not as naive as I thought." That was how it began. Clashing words in crowded galleries. Heated arguments over art, meaning, honesty. I hated him, his arrogance, his precision, the way he dissected feelings like they were lifeless specimens. And yet, I couldn't stop seeking him out. He challenged me, infuriated me, forced me to sharpen my voice. But then came the night that changed everything. It was raining, the city drowning in silver streaks of water. I had just left an exhibition where, once again, Ethan's words had cut too close to the bone. I stormed out, furious, walking nowhere. When I heard footsteps behind me, I turned, and there he was, equally soaked, his perfect suit ruined, his hair plastered to his forehead. "Why are you following me?" I demanded. He hesitated, his chest rising and falling, and for once, the sharp mask slipped. "Because," he said softly, "I don't know how else to understand what you do to me." The rain roared around us, neon lights blurring against the wet pavement. I should have laughed. I should have walked away. But instead, I stood frozen, because for the first time, Ethan Carrington looked not like a critic, but a man. A lonely man, cracking open under the weight of feelings he couldn't name. And just like that, something shifted between us. We weren't friends. We weren't lovers. We were something far more complicated, two men orbiting each other with magnetic pull and dangerous gravity. It wasn't easy. Our worlds collided like storms, full of jagged words and stubborn silences. Yet beneath it all, there was a fragile tenderness we both tried to deny. And then in a morning neither of us could have predicted, a knock at my apartment door changed everything. When I opened it, a child stood there. A boy, no older than 6, clutching a letter with trembling fingers. His eyes were wide, scared, searching. The letter was addressed to me, and in that moment, my world and Ethan's was about to unravel. The boy didn't speak at first. He just stood there in the dripping hallway, his shoes soaked through, his hands trembling as he offered me the letter like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My chest tightened. I crouched down, trying to meet his gaze. "Hey, are you lost?" He shook his head quickly, eyes darting between me and Ethan, who loomed behind me, silent but rigid. "Where's your mom or dad?" I asked, my voice gentler this time. Again, no answer. Just the letter, pressed insistently into my hand. I looked at Ethan. His jaw was tight, his eyes unreadable. But there was something there, a flicker of unease I'd never seen before. The envelope was damp, the ink smudged from rain, but my name was clear enough. To Adrian. My throat went dry. With shaky fingers, I tore it open. The handwriting was rushed, desperate. "This is Noah. He has no one else. Please take care of him. You're the only one I can trust." No signature, no explanation. Just that. I looked up at the boy Noah. His eyes were big and dark, filled with a kind of sadness no child should know. My pulse hammered in my ears. "This has to be a mistake," I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. "I don't know any kid. I don't," but before I could finish, Noah's small voice broke the silence. "You're Adrian, right?" I froze. "Yeah." His lip trembled. Then, "My mom said you'd keep me safe." The next hour blurred into chaos. I ushered him inside, draping a towel over his shoulders, fumbling to find him something dry to wear. He barely spoke, just clung to that letter like it was the last piece of his world. Ethan followed us in, his presence a storm cloud in my tiny apartment. He stood in the corner, arms crossed, eyes sharp, saying nothing as I stumbled through questions Noah couldn't or wouldn't answer. Finally, I snapped. "Are you going to help? Or just stand there judging me like one of your damn reviews?" His eyes narrowed. "This isn't something you handle with impulsive kindness, Adrian. There are procedures. The police, social services. And throw him into the system." I shot back, my voice shaking. "He's terrified. Look at him, Ethan. Do you really think the system is safer than someone who actually cares?" For the first time, Ethan's composure cracked. His gaze flickered to Noah, who sat curled on the couch, clutching my oversized hoodie around his small frame. Something in Ethan's face softened, but only for a second. He looked back at me. "Caring isn't enough. Not for something like this." The word stung because part of me knew he was right. But when Noah's small hand slipped into mine, trembling and warm, I knew there was no turning back. Days passed, each one heavier than the last. Noah barely spoke, but when he did, it was always about his mom, snippets of stories, fragments of memory. Her laugh, her cooking, the way she sang him to sleep. But never her name, never where she was now. I painted to keep myself sane. Canvases filled with broken colors, frantic strokes. But this time, I wasn't painting for exhibitions or critics. I was painting because the silence in the apartment was unbearable, and because every time Noah sat by the window staring out like he was waiting for someone, my chest ached. Ethan came by more often than I expected. At first, he claimed it was to make sure I didn't do anything reckless. But the way he lingered bringing groceries, quietly fixing the leaky faucet, even reading to Noah when I was too exhausted to keep my eyes open, it became clear he was entangled too. whether he liked it or not. And Noah, he warmed to Ethan in a way that startled me. The boy who barely spoke to me would crawl into Ethan's lap with a book, listening intently as that cold, polished voice softened into something almost tender. One night, after Noah had finally fallen asleep, I turned to Ethan, unable to hold back. "Why are you here?" He looked at me, and for once, there was no armor in his eyes, only exhaustion, because every time I try to walk away, I can't. But the world doesn't stay still for long. A week later, a knock rattled my door again. This time it wasn't a child. It was the police. "Are you Adrian Miller?" one of them asked. "Yes," I said cautiously. The officer's gaze flicked past me, to the couch where Noah sat clutching his toy car. "We've been looking for that boy." My stomach dropped. Ethan's hand brushed against mine, steadying me, but my pulse was chaos. "What do you mean?" I asked. The officer sighed. "His mother's missing. There's an ongoing investigation. Until we sort this out, he needs to come with us." Noah's face drained of color. His small hand clutched at mine, desperate. "Adrian, don't let them take me. Please." I looked at Ethan, panic flooding my chest. His jaw was tight, his eyes blazing in a way I'd never seen before. "This isn't right," he said firmly, stepping forward. "You can't just drag him away without answers." The officer's tone hardened. "Sir, we're following procedure." And in that moment, something inside me broke. "You'll have to go through me first." The tension in that tiny apartment could have cracked the walls. Noah was crying now, muffled sobs tearing through the silence. The officers exchanged a look, clearly frustrated. "Mr. Miller," one of them said carefully, "I understand you're attached to the child, but obstruction won't help. If you care about him, you'll let us do our job." But how could I hand him over to strangers when he had no one else? Before I could answer, Ethan spoke. His voice was calm, deliberate, the voice of a man used to commanding rooms with nothing but words. "If you want to do this by the book, then do it properly. Get a warrant. Until then, you're not taking him anywhere." The officers bristled, but they knew he was right. With a final glare, they turned and left, muttering about returning with paperwork. The door slammed shut, and the silence that followed was deafening. I turned to Ethan, my chest heaving. "Why did you—" "Because," he cut in, his voice low, "I'm not letting them destroy him. Or you." For the first time, I realized how much we were in this together. That night, as Noah slept curled between us on the couch, I stared at the ceiling, my mind a storm. I was in way over my head. I didn't know how to raise a child. I barely knew how to take care of myself. But as Noah's small hand clung to my shirt, and Ethan's steady breathing filled the silence, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever this was, however it ended, I couldn't walk away. And judging by the way Ethan's hand brushed mine in the dark, neither could he. Sleep didn't come easily after that night. Every creak of the floorboards, every car passing in the street below made my heart jump, as if the police would come storming in at any second. I spent hours staring at Noah's small, peaceful face, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, terrified that any moment he'd be taken away. Ethan didn't sleep much either. He stood by the window for hours, his silhouette rigid against the neon glow. His presence was both grounding and unnerving. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to care. But he did. And that scared me more than anything. By morning, I was exhausted. As I stumbled into the kitchen, I found Ethan already there, pouring coffee like he owned the place. "Since when do you—" I started. "Since you looked like death," he cut in, sliding a mug toward me. His voice was sharp, but his eyes looked worn, almost tender. I sipped the coffee, trying not to show how much I needed it. "So what now? The cops are coming back, aren't they?" He nodded slowly. "Probably. And if they do, you won't win by standing in their way again." "Then what the hell am I supposed to do?" My voice cracked despite my best efforts. "He's just a kid, Ethan. He's got no one." For once, Ethan didn't have a quick retort. He sat across from me, fingers steepled, his gaze heavy. Then we find out who left him with you. And why. The search began clumsily. The letter was the only clue, and it was maddeningly vague. No name, no contact, just desperation scribbled on damp paper. I scoured every word, every smudge, hoping for anything that could point to Noah's mother. Nothing. Ethan suggested we hire a private investigator. I balked at the idea at first. I barely had money for rent, let alone detective fees. But he silenced my protest with a look. Don't argue. This isn't about pride, Adrian. It's about survival. And so, 2 days later, a PI named Marcus Delgado appeared in my apartment. He was rough around the edges, with eyes that had seen too much, but he listened carefully as I explained everything. When I handed him the letter, his brow furrowed. This wasn't written in a rush, Marcus said finally, tapping the paper. It looks rushed, but it's deliberate. Whoever wrote this knew what they were doing. What do you mean? I asked. I mean, he said, sliding the envelope into a folder. Your mystery woman isn't just desperate. She's hiding. The words hit like a punch. Hiding. From what? From who? Meanwhile, Noah began to unravel in ways I didn't know how to fix. At first, he clung to me constantly, terrified I'd vanish if he looked away. Then, just as suddenly, he withdrew silent, distant, staring out the window for hours with hollow eyes. One night, I found him curled in the corner of his room, tears streaming silently down his cheeks. My heart shattered. Hey! I whispered, kneeling beside him. What's wrong, buddy? He shook his head, burying his face in his knees. She's not coming back, is she? I froze. Your mom. He nodded. She promised. But she lied. I wanted to say she wasn't lying, that she'd come back, that everything would be okay. But the words stuck in my throat. I couldn't promise him something I didn't believe myself. So instead, I pulled him into my arms, holding him as tightly as I dared. I don't know, I admitted softly, but I do know you're not alone. Not anymore. His small arms wrapped around my neck, desperate and trembling. Don't let them take me. I swallowed hard, fighting tears. I won't. I promise. Behind me, in the doorway, Ethan watched silently. His face was unreadable, but his hands were clenched into fists. The days bled into weeks. Between gallery rejections, police calls, and the looming threat of social services, life became a balancing act on a crumbling tightrope. But somewhere in the chaos, a strange rhythm emerged. Mornings were chaos-spilled cereal, lost shoes, rushed arguments about who was walking Noah to school. Afternoons were quieter, Noah doodling in sketchbooks while I painted, Ethan pacing as he dictated reviews into his phone. Evenings were the strangest of all, family dinners that weren't supposed to be family dinners. Bedtime stories read in Ethan's low, soothing voice, the warmth of something I couldn't name settling in my chest. One night, after Noah had finally fallen asleep, I found myself standing beside Ethan on the balcony. The city stretched out below us. You're good with him, I said quietly. He smirked, but it was faint. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not. I didn't expect it. He leaned on the railing, his gaze distant. Neither did I. There was a weight in his voice I couldn't ignore. For once, the great Ethan Carrington sounded vulnerable. And it terrified me how much I wanted to close the distance between us, to reach out, to bridge the impossible gap that had somehow grown smaller every day. But I didn't. Not yet. Marcus returned with news a week later. She worked at a gallery downtown, he said, dropping a file onto my table. Not as an artist, front desk, bookkeeping, odd jobs. Kept a low profile. 6 months ago, she vanished. No forwarding address, no record of relocation. Just gone. My chest tightened. And Noah? Marcus nodded. The kid was with her the whole time. Neighbors say she was protective, kept to herself. But then 2 nights before she disappeared, there were reports of a man hanging around the building. Tall, suited, asking questions. Then she was gone. Ethan stiffened beside me. Do you have a name? Marcus shook his head. Not yet, but I'll find one. I sat back, my head spinning. A man in a suit. a mother disappearing, a child left on my doorstep. None of it made sense. Why me? Why Noah? Ethan's voice was low, controlled, but there was steel in it. Whoever he is, he wanted something, and she knew it. That's why she ran. And why she left Noah with me, I whispered. The weight of it settled like stone in my chest. I wasn't just protecting a child. I was shielding him from something bigger, darker, and far more dangerous than I'd realized. And I couldn't do it alone. That night, after Marcus left, I found myself pacing the apartment, restless. Ethan watched me for a while before finally speaking. You're thinking yourself in circles. I'm trying to figure out why she trusted me, I snapped, running a hand through my hair. I barely knew her, hell. I don't even know her name, and she dropped her kid at my door like I'm some kind of savior. Maybe she saw something in you, Ethan said simply. I froze. What's that supposed to mean? He held my gaze, unflinching. That for all your chaos and recklessness, you're the kind of man who wouldn't turn his back on a child, even if it destroys you. The words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. For a moment, neither of us moved, the air between us heavy, charged. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that I wasn't that noble, that I was terrified, out of my depth, drowning. But then I remembered the way Noah clung to me, the way his eyes searched mine for safety. And I realized Ethan was right. But rightness didn't erase fear, because the more I thought about that faceless man in the suit, the more I knew this wasn't over. And when the phone rang at midnight, an unknown number flashing on the screen, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. I picked up, my voice shaking. Hello. A pause. Then a voice low, calm, dangerous. You have something that belongs to me. My blood ran cold. Noah stirred in his sleep. Ethan's eyes snapped to mine, sharp with alarm. The voice continued. Enjoy your time while you can. I'll be coming for him soon. The line went dead. I dropped the phone, my hands trembling. Ethan was already moving, his face grim, his voice steady. Adrian. Who was that? I looked at him, my heart pounding, the weight of dread crashing over me. The man, I whispered. He's coming. The call changed everything. For days, we lived like fugitives in plain sight. Every knock on the door made my heart lurch. Every shadow on the street looked like a threat. Ethan became the strategist, setting up precautions I never would have thought of: contacts, safe numbers, a list of lawyers who owed him favors. I became the shield, clinging to Noah as if my arms alone could keep the darkness away. Marcus moved fast. Within a week, he had a name, Richard Hale. Collector. Powerful, wealthy, the kind of man who snapped his fingers and made problems disappear. He had ties to the underbelly of the art world, dealings in stolen pieces, whispered threats to anyone who stood in his way. And 6 months ago, he'd started hunting for something, or someone. Noah's mother had worked briefly for one of his galleries. She'd seen too much, maybe uncovered something she wasn't meant to. Marcus wasn't sure of the details. But what was clear was this: Richard wanted leverage. And when she vanished, he turned his eyes to Noah. It made me sick. A child. Just a child. I stared at my hands that night, paint-stained and trembling. I wasn't a fighter. I wasn't a hero. But as Noah slept in the next room, his small breaths filling the silence, I swore to myself, I wouldn't let Hale take him. Not while I was alive. The confrontation came sooner than expected. We'd gone to a small gallery opening me first in weeks. I almost didn't go, but Ethan insisted. You can't stop living, he told me. If you hide, he's already won. I hated that he was right. The gallery was bright, alive with chatter, the air thick with wine and perfume. My work hung modestly in the corner, barely noticed. I tried to focus, to smile, to pretend. But then I saw him, Richard Hale, tall, impeccably dressed, smiling that cold smile of men who believe the world belongs to them. His eyes swept the room and landed on me. The air left my lungs. Ethan felt me stiffen and turned. The moment his gaze followed mine, his face hardened like stone. Hale approached slowly, like a predator circling prey. Adrian Miller, he drawled. The artist who paints too honestly for his own good. I couldn't speak. My throat closed. Ethan stepped forward, his presence sharp and unyielding. Walk away, Hale. But Hale only smiled wider. You're protective. How quaint. Tell me, where's the boy tonight? My blood ran cold. I wanted to scream, to lunge, to do anything, but Ethan's hand gripped mine under the table, anchoring me. He's safe, Ethan said, his voice like steel. And he will remain safe. Hale's eyes glinted. We'll see about that. Then he was gone, melting back into the crowd as if he'd never been there at all. But his words lingered, poisonous. The next days blurred into chaos. Lawyers, police, endless paperwork. For once, Ethan's influence mattered. His name, his reputation. The sheer force of his presence opened doors I could never have touched alone. Still, the fear was constant. Every time Noah walked to school, I felt my chest tighten until he was back home. Every time the phone rang, I braced for another threat. And through it all, Ethan was there. Not just as a shield, but as something more. Late nights spent whispering strategy turned into late nights spent whispering truths we'd never dared speak. His hand would brush mine, linger, then finally stay. His walls crumbled in pieces. One laugh, one glance, one kiss that started as anger and ended as surrender. It was terrifying. It was reckless. It was everything. The breaking point came when the police finally acted. Marcus had found enough evidence to expose Hale's dealings. With Ethan pushing the right hands, the case exploded. Suddenly, Hale was on the defensive, his power slipping. One evening, as Noah sat between us coloring in his sketchbook, the phone rang again. I almost didn't answer, but Ethan nodded. Hale's voice was tight this time, stripped of its calm veneer. You think this is over? You think you've won? I swallowed, forcing my voice steady. It's not about winning. It's about Noah. He's not yours. He never was. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. You sound braver than you are, Adrian Miller. Let's see how long that lasts. The line went dead. Ethan pulled me close immediately, his arms steady around me. He's desperate. That means we're close. And he was right. Within days, Hale was arrested. The evidence Marcus gathered was damning: money laundering, theft, blackmail. His empire crumbled overnight. When the news broke, I watched Noah play with his toy cars on the rug, oblivious to the storm that had just ended. Relief washed over me so hard I almost collapsed. It was over. For the first time in months, it was over. Life didn't magically fix itself after that. There were still legal battles, custody hearings, social workers, endless questions about Noah's future. But when the dust settled, when the papers were finally signed, something miraculous happened. Noah wasn't taken away. He wasn't placed with strangers. He was placed with me. The judge's words blurred through tears I couldn't hold back. The court recognizes Adrian Miller as the legal guardian of Noah James. My hands shook as I signed the papers. Ethan was beside me, his hand resting steady over mine. And Noah, sweet, brave Noah, smiled for the first time in weeks. Months later, the world felt different. Our apartment was still small, still messy, but it was home. Paintings covered the walls, not for critics, not for galleries, but for us. Noah's laughter filled the rooms, louder than any fear. Ethan had changed, too. The sharp edges were still there, but softer now. He smiled more, laughed more. He'd traded cold suits for rolled-up sleeves, late-night reviews for late-night stories with Noah. And with Mayhay wasn't the critic anymore. He was something else, something I hadn't dared hope for. One golden afternoon, the three of us sat in the park. Noah sprawled on the blanket, sketching clumsy dinosaurs. Ethan leaned against me, the weight of him warm, solid, undeniable. I never thought this would be my life, I admitted quietly. Ethan glanced at me, his lips curving. Do you regret it? I looked at Noah, at the boy who had stumbled into my life and rewritten it. I looked at Ethan, at the man who had once terrified me and now was the center of my world. And I shook my head. Not for a second. Ethan's hand found mine, threading our fingers together. Noah looked up, grinning, his small hand reaching to join ours. For the first time, I felt whole. And as the sun dipped low over New York, casting the city in gold, I knew one thing for certain. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were a family, and that was the most beautiful painting of all. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.